How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling very sad, actually. I think she's Scotland's standout post-war politician. Extraordinary legacy. She's fought 8 elections in 8 years. She's won every single one of those 8 elections. She's been a champion of progressive and liberal legislation in the Scottish Parliament. And I'll just be very sad to see her go. But I don't grudge her really stepping back from frontline politics because, as she said herself today, I'm only human. She must be exhausted.
Do you fancy a shot at it? Is it your turn?
No, I'd hate it.
Would you?
I'd absolutely hate it. I can't imagine a job that I would hate more. Just the constant scrutiny. I think just would be absolutely horrible. And I'm a gay man, so I imagine it would be even worse as a gay man. So no, I wouldn't like it at all.
Right, okay. When you talk about the scrutiny and the hating it and the difficulty that you would consider that you would face, why is that? Where's that come from?
Well, I think, and the First Minister touched on this herself. She said, I can't go out for a walk on my own. I can't go to a coffee shop with my pals without people paying a close attention. And that comes with the job. And she wasn't complaining about that. She was just describing that if you're a very high profile politician like she is, every single person in the country knows who you are. So you can't really have a wee quiet moment on your own. And she talked about that. But I think she also touched on the fact that politics these days, there can be a lot of really acidic comments in it. My other half was saying to me just now that Vogue UK posted a picture of Nicola Sturgeon from one of the photo shoots that she'd done, and they posted that this afternoon and just said, "Thank you, First Minister, for your service." And you'd think most people would think, you know what, those were nice pictures and nice of Vogue to do that, but instead, apparently, underneath, there's just loads of hateful comments about her. And you wouldn't be human if you didn't find that exhausting.
Well, absolutely, and hateful comments are never excusable. I wonder, John, if there's a consideration here, though, and if I lean on my own personal experience just of the last few years, I worked at the BBC during the Scottish independence referendum campaign and the referendum itself, and on more than one occasion, BBC staff were advised by security at the BBC in Glasgow to exit the building via any exit that wasn't the main exit, because there were protesters outside waiting to have a go, frankly. And that moved online, as we know. There's been a sort of really difficult campaign online from supporters of independence as well as others against those who may have differing views. And I just wonder if the polarisation of the independence debate, of which Nicola Sturgeon clearly has been a figurehead for at least 8 years, if not longer, if actually there's a bit of introspection for the SNP to be doing at this transition phase.
Well, I think there's introspection for everybody who engages in social media all the time. And I think a lot of stuff on social media is absolutely poisonous. And if you just type in Nicola Sturgeon's name to social media and read some of the poison.
But could this be a clean sweep, though? I mean, for a new SNP leader to actually lead the charge on cleaning that up?
Well, that rather implies that Nicola Sturgeon is responsible for attacks on her, which obviously
Well,
she
that's
isn't.
not what I'm saying. I'm saying that attacks on other people who maybe have disagreed with her
I,
from
I,
SNP supporters has been particularly toxic in the last few years.
there are toxic attacks from both sides,
Yeah.
but I think you'll be hard pressed to look through Nicola Sturgeon's statements herself that she's ever made, her appearances over more than a decade as First Minister and Deputy First Minister, the grace with which she tackles and speaks to her political opponents. I think you'd be hard pressed to pin any responsibility on Nicola Sturgeon.
She said she detests the Tories and called opponents democracy deniers.
Well, she said she detested. Look, I don't use the word detest.
Sure,
And
she did.
honestly, if you can look over 15 years and find one statement from her that you think she ought not to have said, that's not a terrible record for a frontline politician. The attacks from extremists on both sides, I think, are horrible and lamentable. I was very struck by the Scottish Tories today, the leader of the Scottish Tories, by contrast with the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. Instead of saying something gracious and nice about her service, just paid a very kind of, posted something really acidic and small-minded. I just think it's always better in politics to try and find common cause with your political opponent, and to try and be gracious, because at the end of the day, they're all human beings. And in my experience as a journalist, I think that good people go into politics for all parties, and most people enter politics for the very best of motives.
So, John, with all of this in mind, who on earth is going to want that job?
Lots of people are going to want the job. As you know yourself, there's never any shortage of people who want the top post in politics. I mean, personally, I can't imagine anything worse. Absolutely hate to be the first minister. I love the job that I do, and I don't obviously have the profile she has, or get the kind of attacks that she has. There are a number of talented people. I'm guessing you're going to say, who am I going to support? I don't know is the answer to the question. I'm going to sit down and listen to the various people, hear their manifestos, and make up my mind. It'll have to be somebody from Holyrood, of course, because you can't be a Westminster MP and become First Minister.
Well, Alex Bell was suggesting earlier on that there could be a change in SNP rules to make sure that that could happen, because some people have very clearly said they think Stephen Flynn could be the next person to lead the party.
Yes, I noticed the bookies were saying that. I think the bookies haven't really read the SNP constitution very carefully. I think if you're First Minister, you should be sitting in Holyrood. I don't think you could become SNP leader, of course, but then you wouldn't be able to become First Minister. And clearly, we need somebody at First Minister's Questions to answer questions from parliamentarians at Holyrood. It's an important period in our country's history, so I think it'll be somebody from Holyrood.
We know, of course, previously Nicola Sturgeon, it was a coronation, no one else. There was clear succession planning. Alex Salmond made sure that she was the person in waiting. That's not happened this time. Some people saying that is refreshing. Do you worry that it could get quite a nasty fight within the party?
No, I'm not worried that it's going to be nasty. And no, I don't believe it was a coronation. You have to remember that although it's certainly true that nobody stood against her.
That's a coronation, isn't it?
As the leader, wait till I finish my sentence. You put your name forward at Holyrood, and other political leaders can put their names forward as well. And Holyrood then votes, the Scottish Parliament then votes for who it wants as First Minister. Our political opponents put their names forward and they lost. A coronation does not involve several different candidates and a Parliament voting.
Just by way of process, are you content that the SNP membership, which will have a say in all of this, about 100,000 people, less than 2% of the Scottish population, that they will have the deciding voice in all of this? Does that sound like a democratic deficit to you?
Well, certainly compared with the Conservative leadership, where we've had two prime ministers in succession elected by a very small demographic in the southeast of England, with only a few thousand members, it is a triumph of democracy. Scotland's biggest party is the SNP. It is proportionately the largest political party, I think, in Europe. And the leader of the SNP will then be able to put their name forward to become First Minister. And Holyrood, as a parliament, will be able to vote on that. That's democracy.
You said you don't know who you will support. Who do you think should rule themselves out immediately, John? Who is not fit to be First Minister?
I would dream of saying that anybody's not fit in a democracy. Anybody should be able to put their case forward, should be able to argue their case, and then should have their opinions heard, and people should be able to vote.